Hey there, it's Bogdan, and I'm super excited to be making this video for you in which we're going to be talking about the topic of motivation. Specifically, in this video here, this quick video, I'm going to be talking about and answering the question of where does motivation actually come from? I'm going to be talking a little bit about the structure of the brain and what modern research shows us about motivation and where it comes from, how we can activate it to be more motivated. Because motivation is a big topic. It's something I've studied intensely for years, countless books and research papers and studies and courses and things like that to be able to figure this out. Where does motivation actually come from? Because it's a big thing. In fact, they did a study in Stanford University, and it lasted over 40 years. That's the original study, and then they did a whole bunch of follow-up studies around that original study over the course of 40 years, and they found that the ability to motivate ourselves, to be self-control, have self-control, to delay gratification, which I'm sure is a term you've heard of, delay gratification, has shown to be one of the most accurate, if not the single most accurate predictor of success and results and achievement in life. They took these people and these students back then, and they found that the ones who were able to be self-disciplined, who would be able to be self-motivated, got better grades, and then they tracked them into adulthood, and they had better relationships, they earned more money, they were fitter, they were healthier. And so if we're able to just develop this one characteristic and master motivation in our lives, which is one of my big messages, because it's something the school system should have taught us, but it didn't, if we're able to master this, it will help us in so many different areas of our life. Beyond that, in another kind of survey they did, they found that lack of motivation, lack of willpower was the number one reason that people listed for why they didn't achieve their goals. And so this is a big topic, which is why I'm making this video for you. This is why I created a motivation program, which is why I've talked about this topic in the past, and why I'm making this video for you, addressing this specific question, which is where does motivation actually come from? And so with that, let's get into it. Let's get into this video, into this topic. And let's start with the fact that there are kind of three brains. We don't actually just have one brain, we have three brains. Or we have one unified brain, but it helps to compartmentalize it sometimes because different parts of our brain have different specific functions that help us survive, help us thrive as well. And so we're going to look at this. And this was first, one of the main theories here was proposed back in the 1960s by a researcher, by a neuroscientist by the name of Paul MacLean. Paul MacLean proposed this kind of triad, the fact that we have these three brains that are working together kind of to make us function. The first one of these brains he identified was something you may have heard of before, which is your reptilian brain. This is kind of evolutionarily speaking, the oldest part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that helps us kind of survive. It's our survival instincts. It's the reason why if someone goes super close to our face, we flinch naturally, instinctively. We can't help it because it helps us survive. It's the reason why, for example, we don't touch hot objects and burn ourselves, or we may have once in childhood, but we learned from that, and now we avoid that and we don't touch things that are hot and we don't burn ourselves. So whatever the thing is, it helps us survive. It's the reason we need to eat, it's the reason we need to drink, and so on. That's the reptilian brain. It's our survival instincts, our basic biological needs. And then out of that, beyond just that, there are also psychological and emotional needs we have, which I'll talk about in a moment. But that's the first part of the brain, which is the reptilian brain. Beyond that, he found, as he proposed in that paper, in that research paper, there is a second part of the brain, evolutionarily speaking, that evolved next. And this is something that's in pretty much all mammals. This is the limbic system, or the limbic brain, also known as the feeling brain. The feeling brain, the part of the brain, the center for emotions, for feelings. And it's the part of the brain that turns sensory information around us, things around us, into emotions, into feelings. It's the reason why we have feelings, why we feel different things at different times based on what's going on around us, based on what we think, and so on. It's the feeling center of the brain, the emotional center of the brain. It's also the center for the brain for memory. It's the reason why we tend to remember highly emotional events much more than just boring, mundane stuff. Why we remember those things and kind of replay them in our heads during our lifetime. So it's also the center for memory. But that's the second part of the brain. The third part of the brain, he proposes the most evolved part of the brain. It's something that's kind of unique to human beings and a few other species. It's also what makes us so dominant as a species, why we human beings have been able to have such advancement, such growth, such technological growth and innovation, is the neocortex, which is the logical, the rational part of the brain. It's the part of the brain that can think, that can process information, that can think kind of more objectively about things around us. And so that's the third part of the brain. Now, here's where the first kind of misconception about motivation stands and what it is. And in fact, you may have heard this before, because I know I've heard it a lot of times. It's been passed around basically for years, for decades, that it's our logic that controls motivation. It's our logic that we should listen to. In fact, this is a big kind of topic that people talk about. They say that the key to kind of being motivated, the key to achieving success in life, they say, is to listen to your logic, to do what you know is logically right, and then kind of put down a pedestal and to kind of beat your emotions into submission. A lot of books talk about this. A lot of people pass around this idea that our emotions are bad and they don't help us. Our emotions are kind of like these children that are preventing us from achieving the success we want. Like logically, we know we should go to the gym, but our emotions don't feel like it, and so on. However, hence this kind of debate around logic versus emotion. However, even though the neocortex, the logical part of the brain, is very, very powerful, it's what makes us so powerful as a species, which I'll talk about in a moment, it's not the part of the brain that controls motivation. Motivation actually comes from emotion, comes from the limbic brain, not from the neocortex. And one of the best kind of studies, one of the people that studied this a lot, was a guy by the name of Antonio Damasio, and you can go and look up his work. Antonio Damasio, and one of the studies that he did, experiments he did, was he took people who had damaged amygdalas. So amygdala is one of the small parts within the limbic system, within the limbic feeling brain, and he took people who had damaged amygdalas for whatever reason. And he did research on them. He asked them questions, he studied them, and why they were, for example, doing certain things in a certain way. And these people who had damaged amygdalas, which means they kind of didn't have the ability to process things emotionally, they didn't have emotions, which is what a lot of people say out there is perfect. You should have, if you don't have emotions to distract you, you should achieve great success. But these people with these damaged amygdalas, they couldn't even make basic decisions. They could rationalize, oh, I should do this, or this is the better decision for me, I should do this, but they couldn't make the decision. Even the most stupidly simple things they couldn't decide on, such as what to eat. They knew which one they wanted to choose, but they couldn't pull the trigger. They couldn't make the decision. They couldn't motivate themselves to actually go forward and take action on that decision, because once again, it's the emotions. It's our emotional center. It's the limbic system, the limbic brain that controls motivation. That's the part. It's actually our emotions that drive our motivation, not our logic. And this is one of the big misconceptions, again, that I'm attempting to shatter here with this video. This is what modern research shows us. It's our emotions that drive motivation. But I also want to take a step back and kind of go to a next level of understanding with this. Because what really happens is our brain, as soon as we have tasks or projects or things around us, I'm sure you have a long to-do list, you have a lot of things, goals that you want to achieve and things like that. What our brain actually does, and this is the answer, where motivation actually comes from, is it will go and it will take those projects, goals and things like that, and it will analyze that. And so it will look first through the reptilian brain. Firstly, if something's going to help you survive in some way, or for example, like sex and reproduction, that's another kind of biological need that we have. If it's going to do those things, we're going to be automatically to do it. That's in charge of the kind of reptilian brain. Beyond biological needs, we also have core psychological needs around that. And you can see kind of, I'm going to flash a graphic on this during the editing process so you can kind of see this out. But we also have psychological and emotional needs that we have. For example, we all, as a human species, we need to connect, or we want to feel a sense of calm and certainty at certain times. We also need kind of dopamine, we need entertainment, we need things to happen around us, else we'll be bored. And so we have a lot of these psychological and emotional needs as well. And so what really happens is our brain will scan the things around us, the projects, the opportunities, the things that we could be doing, and it will filter through this. So we'll ask, hey, will this help me either survive? So will this help me fulfill one of my biological needs from the reptilian brain? Will this help me survive or for example, have sex or reproduce or something like that? Or will it help me fulfill one of my psychological and emotional needs? Will it help me feel entertained and engaged and alive with life? Will it help me connect and feel either connection or love? Will it help me feel more certain? Will it help me feel more confident? Will it help me do this or that? And then if the answer is yes, then now we'll activate an emotional response in the limbic brain, and that's what causes us to take action. So again, where does motivation come from? It comes from the reptilian brain, so biological needs, comes from our psychological needs, and then if it fulfills one of those things, if a task or a project, our brain connects it with something that's going to help us avoid some type of pain and move towards some type of pleasure, whether that's biological or psychological and emotional, then they'll move it and it will generate an emotional response in our limbic brain, and now we'll be motivated to take action. And all things require motivation. Everything we do requires us to have a motivation in order to pursue it, and in order to take action on it. But that's what creates that kind of process. Now, the reason the neocortex is powerful and differentiates us as a human species, allows for such growth, is because this is consciousness. Neocortex is what gives us kind of the consciousness that we have. It's what allows us to kind of direct this. We can, for example, there are processes which I walk through with my customers and my clients, and those processes, I can help them kind of rewire what their emotional brain links. For example, going to the gym can turn into a pleasurable experience that your subconscious views as pleasurable, and that's because of the neocortex. So the neocortex, we're not just a stimulus response kind of animal where things around us automatically cause us to respond in a different way, but we can also think about it. We can also process it, and we can also make changes. So our subconscious controls our actions, but we can make changes to our subconscious by being self-aware, which again comes from the neocortex, and then we make changes. And I'll talk about this in future videos. But I hope I did a good job answering this question. Again, this is something I talk about literally for hours. I go into this topic, share strategies about this topic in my program called Ignition on motivation and self-discipline. But I wanted to very quickly make this video for you today and answer the question of where does motivation come from? And it's a combination of the reptilian brain, so our biological needs, a combination of our psychological and emotional needs, and then out of that kind of primal response generates an emotional response, and it's our emotion that drives motivation, not our logic, just like, for example, researchers, neuroscientists, just like Antonio Damasio and others have found through their research, modern research, what shows us what drives our behavior today. And I hope you found this video useful. If you did, make sure you like. If you have any questions about it, comment down below and I'll be able to interact with you and answer more specific bits about how you can apply this into your life. And then, of course, I'm going to kind of talk about these topics in future videos as well, and on the Potencia platform overall, talking about this with courses, books, products, things that are going to serve my audience to be able to change and transform their life. Because this information has been hugely beneficial for me, and I want to be able to share it with you. So if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, share, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. But until then, go out and have an incredible day today.